It's time for NEC On the Run Women's Basketball Edition. I'm Ralph Ventre. I'm fired up, ready to go for our show. I have a lot on tap. We'll take a look at the big picture. We'll examine the NEC stock market. I'll tell you who's getting buckets. We'll do all that and more in the minutes ahead. We are past the halfway point in the Northeast Conference schedule. The season is heating up. We're hitting the stretch run. Let's get it started. Taking a look at the big picture, there are no more NEC unbeatens. St. Francis U knocked Robert Morris from the ranks of the unbeatens on Saturday. The Red Flash used a strong second half to move past the Colonials, avenge their loss from earlier in the season. It puts both teams at 9-1, tied for first place in the standings. They split the season series. They each have 8 games to go. They are in the driver's seat when it comes to the right to host NEC first and second round games. Obviously, the first 2 seeds in the tournament will host the opening pods. It's a new format this year. We'll tell you more about that as we get closer to the tournament. You can also find more info about that on the web, northeastconference.org. But now taking a look back at that big picture, and Wagner has some life. The Seahawks won back-to-back games last week, and now they're only 1 game out of a postseason spot. So they're in the mix. They have postseason aspirations. They did themselves a lot of good by sweeping the NEC's Brooklyn-based contingent last week. Then there's CCSU, 2 wins for the Blue Devils. They moved up into a playoff spot as a result. It's really tight after the top 2 teams, as you can see. 2 teams tied for third at 6-5. The 2 Brooklyn schools right behind at 5-6. We have a lot to sort out in the month of February, and as that picture gains some clarity, we'll be sure to share it with you. But as for now, that's what we're looking at in NEC Women's Hoops. It's time for me to tell you who's getting buckets. This week, we're focusing in on Central Connecticut junior Kiana Patterson. As I mentioned earlier, the Blue Devils, 2 huge victories last week. It bumped them up into playoff position, and Kiana Patterson was a driving force behind both of those wins. She went for 25 in the victory over rival Sacred Heart. She scored 19 on Monday night, averaged 22 per game. That bumped her scoring average up to 13 points per game for the season. That's 8th in the conference. She's shooting nearly 40% from downtown for the season. That's 5th amongst league leaders. And especially when it comes to playing Sacred Heart, she gets buckets. She scored 25 against the Pioneers this past week. When they met back on January 13th, she dropped 23. So she loves playing against the rival Pioneers. She's heating up lately. She's Kiana Patterson, and she gets buckets. I'm good, and I'm ready for a Twitter timeout. This week's tweet comes from St. Francis Brooklyn head coach John Thurston. Follow him on Twitter, SFBK_head coach T. And Coach T was impressed with the effort of his Terriers in Monday's bounce-back victory. They suffered a 3-point setback to rival Wagner on Saturday. They had to travel down to Emmitsburg, Maryland, and take on the Mount, and they posted a resounding victory. They shot 50% from downtown in the game, 84% from the free throw line. They limited Mount St. Mary's to 33% shooting. And as Coach Thurston points out, contributions from everyone. Team basketball has become a staple in Brooklyn Heights during Coach Thurston's tenure. And the Terriers had that going against Mount St. Mary's on Monday night. They're only one game out of third place and 7 to go on their schedule. Let's take a quick examination of the NEC stock market, see which individual's value is on the rise. And that individual would be LIU Brooklyn freshman Jada Johnson. The Blackbirds welcomed her back to the lineup this past week after missing 4 games due to injury, and she wasted no time getting right back into the flow of things. She hadn't had a 20-point game in conference play yet. She scored 27 at George Mason, 22 at UMBC before the new year. This was her first 20-point performance in Northeast Conference play. She dropped 20 and hit the game-winning 3 with 16 seconds to go. It was quite the triumphant return to the floor for Jada Johnson. She is averaging 13.3 points per game. That's 7th in the league, first amongst rookies. She shoots 41% from downtown. She's only a freshman. She's Jada Johnson, and her stock is on the way up. Now, stats amazing. And what's really amazing is we are talking about Jessica Kovacs again in this segment. But really, she's given us no choice. This past week, she scored 32 points in the Flash's lone game, a victory over defending champion Robert Morris. She hit 8 3-pointers in that game, surpassing Alexa Hayward for first place on the Northeast Conference's all-time career leaderboard. But even more amazing than that, it's the second half explosion that Kovacs accounted for in Saturday's win over Robert Morris. The Red Flash trailed by 5 points at halftime, but only 5 minutes into the third quarter, they had a 12-point lead. In a span of 3 minutes and 58 seconds, Kovacs sank 5 third-quarter threes. Later on in the period, she added a 6th to bump SFU's lead up to 15 points. She had 6 third-quarter threes. She hit 5 of them in a 3-minute and 58-second span, and stats amazing. So that just about does it for our show. We talked about Kiana Patterson's explosion, the Terriers' bounce-back win, Jess Kovacs continuing to do Jess Kovacs-like things. Jada Johnson, her stock is on the rise. The season is heating up. We're on the march to March. Get out there and enjoy those games, and we'll see you next week on The Run. For NEC Front Row, I'm Ralph Ventre. Thanks for watching.